Look, I'll be honest. When I first played Fire Emblem 3 Houses, I did not like Dorothea at all. The more I read this character's support conversations, the more I wanted to face wall myself repeatedly. This girl induced migraines on the regular, but after a double take, she went from an annoyance into a fascinating character with excellent writing, where beneath all the superficial layers lied a broken soul who's more relatable than she lets on. Let's explore that. Hey wait, I wasn't joking when I said I didn't like Dorothea at first though. Hell, my first route was Silver Snow. Yeah, that piece of shit. So, I was already salty from how annoyingly dull that route was. While Edelgard and her jester leggings weren't powerful enough bait, Crimson Flower would have been a better first route for me in hindsight. While I enjoyed the game overall, my first playthrough was less than ideal. Well, I made that realization once the H2O got into my system and God aided me in front of a certain gravestone with this divine message. Thou shalt rehydrate thyself and become cultured. Edelgard as a character just wasn't vibing with me at the time. The other Eagles didn't quite pique my interest either, despite me still liking them in the end. And then there was Dorothea, the singular commoner amongst the flock of nobles. I remember this one aspect alone initially stole my attention. Every house has an imbalance of noble and commoner in favor of the former, but the comically large four-headed princess only had one normal person in her class. So Dorothea was the only character in the Eagles that I could connect with. Social status-wise, she immediately clicks with the player. Unless you're rich or something, I don't know. I won't verbally go into detail on the surface level aspects of her background though. That's what the on-screen text is for. Anyway, our beauteous songstress here had a shallow first impression on me because of her reasonings for joining the academy. Rich characterization was a staple for most of the cast, so having this one character obsess over the perfect sugar daddy wasn't an appealing struggle for me. Once I got past her first layer, it just didn't intrigue me enough when other students harbored more lofty goals or coped with a complex personal dilemma, or both. There were themes such as characters battling literal depression and low self-esteem, or one with a complicated family history filled with heinous activity, and the writers hid the struggle masterfully behind a radiant smile, or a tragic prince battling a deteriorating mental state in the face of severe PTSD, then eventually succumbing to madness. Your average player could sink their teeth in and become invested into character arcs like that. Compared to all of that, Dorothea felt bland in comparison. It was difficult for me to grasp the direction the writers were going to make me empathize with her. I remember being puzzled on why she placed so much stock into starting a new life. She had a successful career ahead of her as a lead songstress in the most prestigious opera company, an occupation she prided herself in tandem with her talent for it. Her support chain with Manuela only spun my head into riddles even further when you learned that Manuela felt that Dorothea deserved to be on the center stage. Psst. Spoiler alert, we'll get back to the support later. Just keep it in the back of your mind. Compound all of that with the likely expensive gifts that she received from suitors and nobles, and the girl would have made a killing to retire on if she sold all that shit. But my error in that way of thinking is that I was trying to apply our own societal norms, lifestyle, and privileges onto a fictional character in a totally different, underdeveloped society. And while this is a distinct reality, there are still parallels. I'm sure there are plenty of actors or song artists who are well off financially, but are absolutely miserable with their job. The celebrity life deprives people of genuine love because the status bleeds into their personal life. Now, how does all of that tie to Dorothea, you might ask? Well, all of it. When I gave her a second chance, I went in with the mindset of, let me put myself into this character's shoes, because I feared that I read her from a narrow-minded perspective. Putting aside the financial thing for now, I realized that the genuine conflict in Dorothea's story was never about her struggles of finding a sugar daddy, or that she was a hopeless gold digger, or that she was squandering her potential as a songstress. Dorothea's conflict is a deeply personal one, a tale of a self-loathing woman who struggled with loneliness in the shallow nature of a noble-dominated society, a system that placed unrealistic value on external and superficial things, much like our reality. Even though was I about to say Brilith? What the fuck is a Brilith? Even though Byleth is a brick wall in every support they're in, their B support is a gateway to Dorothea's mindset. She knows better than anyone on what she's doing, and to a fault. She reveals to them about how self-conscious she is about her lack of anything significant to call her own. With that said, this is a great time to expound upon the darker aspects of her background. It'll put things in full perspective. Dorothea is the illegitimate child of a nameless nobleman in the Empire and his maid, so technically she has noble blood in her veins. This nobleman kicked Dorothea and her mother out of his home once he realized the crest hadn't manifest. Soon after, her mother succumbed to illness, and this left the little Dorothea to struggle on her own in the back alleys of Embar for an unspecified number of years. She recalled being spat on and treated like garbage by passing nobles, as stated in her A support with Ferdinand. Manuela overheard her singing one day, according to the Japanese script, and that's when her new life began. Fast forward to after she became a songstress, Dorothea met a man suspected to be her father, as the man said he threw out a maid and her daughter a long time ago. He didn't even recognize her as he tried to flirt with her. Dorothea claims her feelings were beyond fury and was dumbfounded, but hey, I'd say she reacted well. If a parent fed me to the streets and forgot all about me later and tried to flirt with me, nah, their ass is getting banned to the Shadow Realm. So you can see how dark and unfair her life was. It makes the player sympathize with her. While we lack an aristocratic society, there are plenty of quote-unquote high-value people. Monsters hidden underneath flesh who are just as exploitative, shallow, and selfish. But Dorothea also goes through much introspection during her academy days. The world was cruel to her, but she's equally cruel to herself. Byleth's B support was only a peek into her self-loathing. Linhardt's B support starts off with two knights gossiping about her. They mock her because of the method she used to enroll, saying she buttered up some noble as opposed to getting in by her own merit. Now, that could have plenty of implications. Seeing as Three Houses has an aversion to detailing raunchy subjects, I have my doubts that it was a sexual favor. She could have just sweet-talked the dude. The accuracy of this buttering up is irrelevant anyway. Dorothea still feels great shame for needing to resort to such a method to get in, and ultimately being a commanding officer amongst Byleth's forces down the road, and it coincides with her internal struggle. Chiming in here to correct a mistake, I recently reread all of Dorothea support's post-time skip, so certain dialogue differs from White Clouds. While it's true that Dorothea felt she shouldn't lead as one of Byleth's generals, that's the war arc. In the Academy, which would likely be more accurate to this support, she's more concerned about just not deserving to be there, since those soldiers' dialogue is a tad different in White Clouds as well. Still, not that big of a deal, just letting you know before anyone jumps down my throat for it. She is one of many victims caught in the middle of a crest-dominated society's toxic environment. She knew she had nothing to call her own and felt that she hadn't earned her spot. We, the player, should know that she did all that she could with her limited power, but Dorothea still held herself accountable for her past actions. That self-awareness augmented her character for me. The role her support partners play is to ensure Dorothea that she has value, that despite her status, it's the bonds that she's forged with them that matters the most. But before we continue, I'd like to ask if you boop the like button if you've enjoyed yourself so far. It'll support the growth of this small channel, and it'll help YouTube spread this video to the correct audience. I'd really appreciate that. Now, let's listen to something Dorothea says to Byleth in their A support.
Performers, nobility. I met so many people, but none of them ever really knew me. I was just some young, pretty girl who could sing. A spectacle to be admired. Even though everyone praised my looks and my voice and they showered me with gifts, I knew one day I'd be old. My looks would fade, my voice would change. I wouldn't sound the same. And I started to wonder, when I did get old, what would I have left? I'd be old, alone, and back on the streets of the capital, right where I'd started.
I do like how Byleth's supports just allow these characters to openly express their internal struggles. These lines perfectly sum up most of their dilemma. Her spectators only looked at her on stage like she was a piece of sweet candy. And to count your own potential father within that crowd of animals, men who only want you for their own pleasure and desire, is a disgusting reality she had to face. That's why Sylvain, yet another well-written character under the guise of a womanizer, faces the same dilemma. They're two sides of the same coin, and their A and B supports really tie those parallels together. Sylvain is distrustful of women he dates. That's because all of them have the ulterior motive to marry him solely for his high value, his crest, and his status as a noble. They don't see Sylvain They see their object of desire to bolster their standing in a social ladder. Noblemen don't see Dorothea. They just see a sexy woman on stage to slobber over. This deepened her sorrow and showed just how alone she truly was. Remember how I said earlier in the video about real-life celebrities, how deprived of genuine love their lives can be because their fame bleeds into their personal life? That happened to Dorothea. Yuri's support chain with Dorothea was one that I never read until recently. While the conversations were mostly about Yuri's own dilemma with singing, Yuri brought up an interesting point. He plainly spelled out how wrong I was about Dorothea's financial issue that I mentioned in the beginning of the video.
Whether or not your heart's in it now, you certainly didn't appear to hate it back then. I'd never seen you beam so brightly as you did when you helped me train for the performance.
You might be onto something. I felt genuinely happy in that moment.
You just lost your spark for singing. Nothing more. It's how I feel about it in a way.
Just reading that made me facepalm at my past self, man. She was just a lost soul who didn't know what to do with herself. Her talents brought her fame, but at the cost of her spectators and suitors dehumanizing her. Anyone would lose their passion to sing on stage after that, even if they enjoyed the craft. Because of this, I could totally understand her support chains with Manuela better. Her idol, the woman who saved her from poverty by making her a songstress, left to start a new life. Of course she thought following in her footsteps was the right move. Going to the academy was her way to escape this miserable position, devoid of happiness. Dorothea thought if she could just secure her future by marrying some rich, tolerable schmuck, her worst fears wouldn't come true. But over the course of her time at the academy and being thrown into the furnace of war, she knew that that wasn't what she wanted. By her own admission, she wanted someone to just see her as Dorothea, not the mystical songstress. And I believe that many of us, from all walks of life, can relate to that, no matter how minute the relation is. Take me, for example. My personal life is similar. I often wish that others could see me for me instead of what surface level aspects are there on display. Perhaps detailing it would be best, but I'd rather not. I just hope that it's sufficient for me to say that I know how it feels to be on the receiving end, to either be a target of someone's selfishness and lust, or just being valued and viewed solely for what I'm good at, then being tossed away when I'm no longer useful. So, to protect myself and my energy, I've resigned to just burying the real me beneath the surface. It takes someone truly devoted to dig deep enough to find me. Dorothea knew that people only flocked to her because she was good at singing and looked nice. She was right in assuming no one would bat an eye at her if she didn't have those assets. Maybe my experiences aren't note for note the same as Dorothea's because I'm a dude, but it has its similarities here and there. It's why I resonate with this character's struggle a bit, and I'm certain that some of you, especially the ladies out there, relate to her in some manner. I guess it was easy for me to miss all of this about Dorothea initially. Most of her academy dialogue portrayed her as unapologetically in your face with her goals to marry well. I kind of mentally tuned out because of just being bored with her goal. I mean, I still enjoyed her putting Lorenz on the spot with his yee ass bowl cut, but other than that, I was so judgmental of a character that I didn't bother to pay attention to well enough, especially when a lot of conversations had this information blatantly spelled out for me. But I'm so glad I gave this character a double take. She went from one of the most boring characters to a comfy spot in my top 5 most beloved characters in this game. Dorothea is a wonderful representation of those struggling to find their worth, people who've fallen through the cracks of life, as she says, and have to claw their way up, all while battling their insecurities and navigate the world's ugly side to find genuine happiness. I feel like that was the lesson that her character arc was trying to tell. The next video will be on Dimitri, who has genius tier writing of his own that I can't wait to share. You can check out a video about Chloe from Fire Emblem Engage right here on screen, or subscribe to my channel for future video essays. Thanks for watching, and stay chill, y'all.